So I think like when we kind of move out of Bitcoin and into the Ethereum space, this notion that you can deploy code on this sort of like world computer that has a world API exposed, and it will run forever as long as there's an economic incentive. I think that's just fascinating. And this notion of building hyperstructures, which is a popular blog post published by Jacob from Zora, but essentially, exactly what he said, like being able to build these pieces of code that can compose each other, that can run as long as the game theory is correct. But that blows my mind, and I think that's the most important thing that we need to preserve with Ethereum is to make sure that we always have the ability to publish code in a way that anybody can interact with it as long as they pay the price, they pay the current cost of execution.
Get ready. Get ready. You are about to join the crypto revolution. The crypto revolution. This is the Crypto Mastery Podcast with Kevin Jones, where we talk about the future of money and elevate your knowledge in the space.
What's up, everyone? This is Kevin Jones, builder and educator in crypto, and this is the Crypto Mastery Podcast, where we talk about the crypto industry and elevate your knowledge in the space. The podcast is brought to you by SpeedRunEthereum. Test your skills and learn how to build decentralized applications on Ethereum at SpeedRunEthereum.com. Today, I will be speaking with Chad, aka gmchad, aka Ultrasound Chad, from ETH San Diego, and I'm super excited for our conversation. So let's get into this. Chad, welcome to the podcast. It's super awesome to have you. I feel like I just saw you down in San Diego, but I'm really excited for our conversation today. And thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, Kevin, it's great to be on. I think this is my first official podcast. So now the roles are reversed. I started doing this, me being the podcaster, and now I'm on the opposite end of it. So excited to see how this goes.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into your podcast, and we're definitely going to talk about ETH San Diego and all the cool stuff that you're doing for the community down there. I'm really excited to get to that. But for like people that are don't know you, maybe you can like introduce yourself, tell us what you're all about, and what you do.
Yeah, definitely. So my name's Chad. Formerly, software engineer. Have 8 years of experience engineering from enterprise companies to startups. I'm from Santa Monica originally. Moved to San Diego to attend school. Went to UCSD, studied there for computer engineering, bachelor's, graduated, and then just stayed around because San Diego is so awesome. Picked up surfing while I was down here, and along with the community, that's the startup community here, there was just a lot of things that I loved, that I felt LA was lacking, and so ended up in San Diego where I'm at, and then throughout school got into crypto a bit through friends. Didn't really dive into it until sort of my junior and senior year, where I interned at a few companies, and we can definitely go into that. But long story short, right, currently I'm the founder of ETH San Diego, and building a community here for developers in the Web3 space.
Yeah. When I first heard your name, I think it was on Twitter. I found you and I saw like, oh, ETH San Diego, this is so great because I used to live in San Diego and I love it down there. I lived in Oceanside for a while, which is kind of like North San Diego, but I still claim that I lived in San Diego. So that's great. So like, what were some of the companies that you worked with, that you internshiped with along the way?
Yeah, definitely. So actually, before I got into crypto, I was figuring out what I wanted to do for my career, and I didn't have a traditional background, where like I learned to code when I was like 4 or 5. I actually learned to code quite late, and I went to community college before I went to UCSD, and that was a time where I kind of explored a bunch of different career paths, different majors. My dad always kind of pushed me into the engineering route. He wasn't a former engineer, but he did a lot of kind of like mechanical work, electrical work, kind of like a general contractor. And so, the next level up is engineering. And so he kind of recommended, why don't you take some engineering classes? maybe mechanical engineering is interesting, try things out. So this is like, I graduated from high school, don't know what I want to do, kind of knew I was good at math and science. And so it made sense. So I tried a bunch of things, ended up taking this intro to computer science, and it immediately felt like a video game. Like, I was like, this is really fun. Like, this is something that I can get into. And if I can turn school into a game, then I feel like I can succeed. And so, I chose computer science as a major. And during this time, there was a program at my community college called STEM, the STEM program, which is science, tech, engineering, and mathematics. And I had joined that to get support, from the school and from counselors to kind of guide me in the right direction. And they had this program where they were offering an internship at NASA JPL, which is the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena. I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I don't think I'll get in, but I'm going to take a stab at it, and it might help me in my career and show me that there's opportunity in aerospace engineering, and there's tons of software there anyway. So applied for that, ended up getting in, which was super exciting, and interned at JPL for 3 years consecutively. So out of community college into UCSD, and then for a couple more years during that. And so that was kind of like my first, real experience working as a software engineer. During this time, I was researching different things. You're taking software courses. You're immersed in, in school. There's friends. There's people talking about different things. And of course, someone brings up Bitcoin. And this is like 2017, 2016. And I'm like, what's that? So read the white paper, find it really fascinating. I'm taking a bunch of data structures classes, so I sort of understand the stuff. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, how can I partake in this? So you buy a little bit, right? Which is what most people do. But I always really cared about the technology, right? I want to understand how this stuff worked. Looking at the source code, it's C isn't easy to read. And Bitcoin is a pretty advanced piece of software. And so when you're kind of like in school just learning this stuff, it's pretty daunting. Contributing to Bitcoin is also, very complicated. There's tons of like contributor rules, and it's just not something you could just jump into. But so I was thinking, like, how do I get more experience in the crypto space? And I thought, well, just like I got an internship at NASA, let's see if there's an internship that I can get in this space. And I ended up getting recommended from a friend about this company called Riot Blockchain, which is now one of the biggest mining operations in the United States. I think they've got a huge facility in Texas. And I met them. I met the founder, or not the founder, the CEO at the time. Told him kind of where I was at, what my interests were, kind of my background, my skill set. And he was like, why don't you come on for an internship? We're thinking about building a mining pool. Maybe you can help with that. There's some back end work, there's some front end work. And I was like, cool, let's do it. And that's what kind of kickstarted my journey. And I can kind of drill down into that, or we can go in another direction. That was really like the start of my career in crypto.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. What you said about Bitcoin, and like, if you want to be a contributor to Bitcoin, it's like a very like specialized thing, and like the developers and the protocol just in general like really hold the keys to the gate pretty solid, right? And so I think, yeah, it's kind of like a natural thing if you want to like move a little faster and do things a little more interesting, like more advanced protocols, like that can do things like smart contracts, and we're going to get into that with Ethereum. But it's just kind of like a natural segue. So it's interesting to see that you made the segue into the mining market, which I find that a little fascinating. So like, what kind of work did you do while you were there working for them? Like, was it? I know you have like a background in like doing some DevOps related stuff. Was it that kind of work, or was it actually like writing, any kind of like, I imagine it might not have been smart contracts yet, right? You were just kind of like working for like more of a mining company. So maybe you can dive in there.
Yeah, definitely. So the task was to spin up like a mining pool, and I jumped into this like not knowing what this was and what the scope of the work was. So when I got into the weeds of it, I was like, wow, this is way over my head. But I'll take this as a learning experience. And so the first month was just research. I learned about different mining protocols, and the one that I was working on was called Stratum at the time. There was a more advanced protocol coming out from a developer called the Blue Matt, I believe. He's a Bitcoin core developer. He writes a ton of code. He's developed lots of software and continues to push kind of Bitcoin in the right direction, I think. And so I was researching Stratum. I was researching what he was working on, sort of doing compares and contrasts, and essentially looking at what had already been done and if I could fork some implementation of the Stratum protocol to kind of uh, build on top of this, right? And that's kind of always been my go-to rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. If there's something that exists, take it, understand it, fork it, and then add the pieces that you need. There are times when technology just doesn't exist and you have to write the protocol, write the spec, and then implement it. Thankfully, there had been protocols out there like Stratum, and so the first few months was spinning up the Stratum implementation in Node, and then tweaking the different parameters, kind of like the fee rewards, like the splits, running tests against this. And once we had sort of like a steady deployment of this, they asked me to work on like a front end to actually interact with it. Now this pool never went live, so this was kind of like a big research experiment. But I learned a ton, right? I learned a lot about the Bitcoin protocol, how Coinbase rewards, get distributed, and everything from nonces to mining to that entire stack.
So at the time, was the only plan to mine Bitcoin, or was Ethereum not really kind of taken off at the moment? Is that what it was?
Yeah, at that time, right, and I think they still are purely focused on Bitcoin. I mean,
Gotcha.
they are, like, especially now with Ethereum and it being in a proof of stake consensus mechanism, they have no interest.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's cool. So that was kind of like your segue into crypto. And then like, you know, going back a little bit, when you first heard about like Bitcoin and then eventually when you learned about Ethereum, like what were some of the, like the things that just like, jumped out at you as like, oh, this is awesome because, XYZ. What really was interesting you about crypto that kind of pushed you?
Yeah, I think this has changed a lot over time. But in the beginning, it was the notion of questioning what money is and trying to understand that fundamentally and how to implement ways to do this in sort of like a permissionless environment. So you get into like, what the double spend problem is and how Bitcoin solves this and what the difference between distributed, decentralized, and centralized are, right? And being in school and learning about software and learning about different algorithms and different ways of doing things, like all of these pieces were extremely interesting, right? And so you have Bitcoin, which really did take a lot of these very difficult to understand, interesting pieces of technology and put them all together to fundamentally kind of create like a new currency. And I think that was absolutely fascinating to me. At the time, everything was so fascinating because think about like being someone that had never been exposed to computer science or code, and all of a sudden you're like fast tracked and you're learning about all of these things super quickly, going through these classes, drinking from the fire hose. And so that notion really like what is money and how do you code money was kind of what got me intrigued.
And how has it evolved? Like, what is it now that I guess excites you about the way crypto is moving in terms of like industry and evolution?
Yeah, definitely. So I think like when we kind of move out of Bitcoin and into the Ethereum space, this notion that you can deploy code on this sort of like world computer that has a world API exposed, and it will run forever as long as there's an economic incentive. Um, I think that's just fascinating, and you know, this notion of building hyperstructures, which is a popular blog post that was published by Jacob from Zora, but essentially, exactly what he said, like being able to build, these pieces of code that can, compose each other, that can run as long as the game theory is correct. Like I think that is, that blows my mind. And I think that's the most important thing that we need to preserve with Ethereum is to make sure that we always have the ability to publish code in a way that anybody can interact with it as long as they pay the price. They pay the current cost of execution.
Yeah, I listened to a really good podcast. You've listened to the Green Pill before by Kevin Owocki. He talks a lot about kind of like public goods and stuff like that, but he did a whole episode on this concept that like Ethereum is like super modular. And it's this concept of like building systems in a super modular way means that like 1 + 1 is equal to 3. In other words, you build something and you build it in a way that it complements other kind of like, things in the protocol, and it will basically add an additional, value to it, right? It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, right? And I think like Ethereum applications, because they're built in this way of like decentralized data and decentralized nodes, or they're deployed on decentralized nodes, and they're pretty much open and public. Anyone can interact with them, and I think that's a really interesting way to describe like this concept of like blockchain applications is building them super modular, right? Yeah, that's really cool. And I'd love to hear what you think like this current kind of like evolution of crypto has the chance of disrupting, because I know we've kind of seen it a little bit with money, but not so much. I mean, obviously it's been able to empower like people in third world countries to get access to money that they normally wouldn't be able to because they maybe don't have a bank near them. We've seen like the concept of like DeFi, so that also kind of has upended like the banking system in some ways. What other like sectors do you think that crypto really has a chance of really impacting or disrupting in the next few years?
Yeah, I think one that's pretty relevant these days and something that I'm thinking a lot about is data ownership and data monetization in the context of sort of these large language models that we're seeing a lot more about, sort of like the GPTs, right? ChatGPT, GPT-3. You think about these models essentially compress like all the public information, right? And they give you this extremely useful tool that is, 100x compression of all the information that you can query, and it comes up with pretty good results. Um, and that's awesome, right? They're probably going to start charging for this API, and then other providers will build their own. And as long as this information's like public, there's going to be tons of competitors that are able to build these models, and then it'll be a race to the bottom for the API cost. But I think what gets really interesting is sort of niche models on data sets that aren't necessarily public. And so, you can think of healthcare data, for example, right? Like GPTs aren't going to have insights on healthcare data or your wearable data or, internal conversations that you have in your company. But what's interesting is if you were to build models with these, right, by pooling together different sources in a way that's privacy preserving, and there's techniques to do this, you could collaborate with other groups that have niche data sets. Sort of, let's just say, like we're solving for cancer, right? And we have all these healthcare companies that all have really good data on healthcare diagnoses and et cetera. They can build a model together, protect their data, earn tokens, right? Build some sort of consensus mechanism so they can collaboratively train a model, earn, proportionally to based on how much data they provide, and come up with this model that can provide really, really interesting insights that might eventually, solve cancer or something like this, as an example. And I think that's a really interesting use case and blending of or convergence of AI and AI and crypto. And don't want to diverge too much into AI, but I think that's where my mind has been, and I think that's a really interesting use case where you still see the ability to earn off of your own data, off of your own private data, but also create models that are more niche than sort of these general generative pre-trained transformers.
Yeah, that's a really unique perspective. I never had heard that kind of association, but it totally makes sense. Like what you're saying is really resonating with me, because I kind of see the same thing as like right now, like there's so many different companies that hold our data in like a private way or sell our data without us even knowing.
Yeah.
But if we set up the systems in the right way to where we can, like you said, in a private way, forego data that is going to be crucial to the world and help the world in a good way. I think that's definitely something that could upend a certain sector. And like you said, it's important to do it in a private way, right? With privacy in mind. So that's really cool. And in what ways do you think that crypto right now is really like helping? Because we see like these NFT projects like JPEGs and silly JPEGs, and we've already talked a little bit about like the economics. But is there anything else like currently that you're seeing that crypto is helping? One of the things that I come to mind for me is like public goods. It's like this concept of like, helping a community in some way by raising funds in that way. Is there any other like things that you're kind of on your radar for crypto right now in the current state?
Yeah, I think public goods is a big one, right? Things like Gitcoin, which has helped our organization and lots of others get funding for important projects in the space. I think just grants in general, right? Crypto's done a really good job of creating platforms to distribute grants and to come up with governance systems to sort of agree on what grants make sense. And these grants have allowed communities, developers, individuals to get the funds they need to build, right, to grow and to produce in this ecosystem. And I think really kind of to abstract a bit more, you know, uh, focusing on like positive sum games and sort of crypto has done a really good job at providing opportunities or positive sum games for people to partake in, such that protocols, for example, give out grants. These grants help developers make money, but also produce software, and that feeds back into the protocol and it grows. And as long as that protocol is well aligned, right, with the community, with these developers, then you're raising the boat for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And it's awesome that you were able to go down that kind of process and actually get some funding for ETH San Diego. That's probably a good segue for people that are listening. Hopefully, you have some San Diego listeners that we have on the line listening in. What is ETH San Diego? And like, I guess, why did you start it? And where are you at right now with it?
Yeah, definitely. So East San Diego, Ethereum San Diego is a local community here in San Diego with the goal of helping accelerate the growth of Web3 in San Diego. And really, my vision is to turn San Diego into a Web3 hub, sort of on par with something like ETH Denver. The origin story is similar to ETH Denver, actually. It started at a brewery. I just wanted to hang out with more people, more developers specifically in the Ethereum space. I'd been working remote for quite some time. The company that I was at previously, ConsenSys Health, was all remote. And so I didn't have too much of a community here in San Diego to go out and chat about these things with. And so I thought, well, there should be a crypto presence here anyways. I'd love to throw a hackathon at some point. I had been going to a lot of different hackathons for my company and personally. And so the name was kind of a play on, how ETH Global names their hackathons and a way to kind of bootstrap a local community here in San Diego.
Yeah, it seems like there's an ETH whatever hometown that you're in, there's people are spinning those up now, right? But I think it's appropriate because like Ethereum is like a community. It's just this giant community. And I believe you were at DevCon. Unfortunately, we didn't get to meet up while I was there, but when you go to something like that, you really start to see like people from all over the world, that are coming together. And so I think the whole concept of like decentralizing the community and what you're doing with ETH San Diego is just awesome. And I even had the chance to go down there, which thank you so much again for having me. I really enjoyed coming down, and we recorded the podcast and gave a talk. Let's talk a little bit about that. You guys have meetups. So if someone is in San Diego, like how often do you guys meet?
Yeah, so we try to have 2 meetups a month, so bi-weekly. And typically we shoot for one sort of technical meetup, which is either we bring a speaker over, like yourself, to come talk, or it will be sort of hands-on coding session or something technical in nature. The other meetup we do is more of a networking event, so a social. where we get together and just kind of relax, talk about the current state of things, and give space for people that just want to network. Currently, though, we're hosting a Solidity bootcamp, or Ethereum developer bootcamp. Actually, it's more than Solidity. It teaches the fundamentals of how to become Ethereum developer, and this is in partnership with Alchemy Learn. So this is a 7-week bootcamp that we're currently hosting and facilitating, and so we haven't had a meetup for the last couple of weeks, but I'm working on a speaker series for students during this bootcamp. So actively looking for speakers. If there's anyone in the audience listening, if you're a developer, if you're in DevRel, if you can kind of come and speak about your experience, we're looking just for motivational speakers to get our students excited and to give them sort of insight onto what it's like to work in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's probably some people listening, and probably some people in Twitter that will hear this and hopefully send me a DM or send you a DM. So that sounds awesome. And I'd love to come down there again too. As you know, I think my baby's coming soon, so I'm a little tied to home right now. But eventually, I'd love to come back down and visit. I always love being in San Diego.
Congrats on that.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about the Alchemy Learn thing, because I really, when you told me that you were doing this, I was really excited, because I had the chance of getting early access to the Alchemy University. I had done the Road to Web3, and then they came out with this new course that teaches like the fundamentals of blockchain applications, and how did that all come to fruition, and like what can users or attendees expect from that course? Because I think it's a super valuable course, and I would love to hear your input on why it's so valuable.
Yeah, definitely. So it was always on the roadmap to host some sort of bootcamp for ETH SD. And I think I got sort of this notion after hosting enough technical meetups where I saw the same people coming over and over again, asking for something a bit more, something less ad hoc, something more cohesive. And so a bootcamp was always something that I wanted to host. I just didn't know the best way to go about this, and I knew it'd be a lot of work. And creating content takes a ton of time. I would create like the first technical tutorials for our meetups. So like I wrote how to launch an NFT, how to work with Chainlink, stuff like this. And it would take me a long time to write these. And I'm not necessarily like a technical writer or an educator by trade. So, it would take me hours and hours and hours of figuring out how to actually write this and make it useful and digestible. And so it got me thinking a lot about, curation versus creation. And there's a ton of content out there. There's a ton of really good content, right? Like you make great content. Nader makes great content.
Thank you.
You've got the DevRels, you've got the companies, you've got bounty boards, right? So there's tons of tutorials out there. Some of them even pay you to take. And so it got me thinking a lot, like, is there can we just aggregate a lot of content, organize it into a curriculum, bring on mentors that are talented developers, and just host this bootcamp and provide support to students? Because I think that's still a huge value add, even if we're not just creating the content ourselves. And so during this time, my Twitter feed was just full of these like, hey, I'm on the wait list for Alchemy Learn. And there's a lot of people in San Diego that were posting this. And I was like, what is this? Like, this is interesting, right? So I kind of like took a look at it, dove into it a bit, realized that it was Alchemy purchasing or had purchased ChainShop, which was a successful Solidity bootcamp. And they were sort of repurposing that material to create the Alchemy Learn University. And I was like, well, this would be awesome, right? If we could do this. And so jokingly, I retweeted and I was like, hey, should we host an in-person version of this? And one of the DevRels, actually course, creators, or, he wrote a lot of the content himself, Al, he was like, how can I help make this happen? Right? I was like, oh, this is awesome. All right, there's interest. And, we just started talking and figured out what would make sense, how to do this. And I asked a lot for advice, and I met with the founder of ChainShot, a co-founder of ChainShot, Cody. We talked about how to do this, how to facilitate it, and decided to go live with it this year. So we just had our first session last Saturday, the way the bootcamp is being ran is we meet in person for 4 hours every Saturday. We've got a mentor who goes through some slides to talk about kind of the crux of that week, what was really difficult, and then some tips and tricks for how to handle the project. And then it's pretty much reverse classroom after that. So students can work in the office that we're using. Shout out to Edge, by the way. Edge HQ, they're a local cryptocurrency wallet. They've got an amazing office that they're letting us use and co-work out of. And so that's where we're hosting the bootcamp. So after lecture, students can go. They each have their own desks. There's also a conference room, and they can work for as long as they want with the help of mentors during that Saturday session. And then during the week, Monday through Friday, from 9 to 5, they have a desk free of charge that they can go in and work on this material with each other. And we've also got Discord going for async questions. And I'm usually in the office working as well. So, I'm the cheerleader trying to get everybody through this bootcamp.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So, how can people that are listening get involved with the community? Obviously, you have like a Substack, I know, which we're going to make sure we leave that in the comments of the show notes. But what's the best way to engage, like, with the Ethereum San Diego community?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way is just hop in our Discord, say GM, introduce yourself, what you're looking for, and that's the best way to integrate. We've got a really, really local community here. You'll see there's a good group that are always there, saying hi every day, saying GM. But that's typically the best way. We post a lot on Twitter, so anytime we have events, we'll post on Twitter. We'll post about what we're doing, and just interact with one of those socials and come down to San Diego and see what we're building.
Absolutely. Well, I'm definitely excited to come back down. So I'd love to hear, and I don't know if you have any update, but how is the ETH SD hackathon coming along? Is that something that we can expect to see this year? Is it still something you're thinking about? And I guess my second question for that is, like, how can people get involved there if you need help? What can people do to help you?
Yeah, definitely. So I've been thinking a lot about this as well, right? And the initial vision for ETHSD was to host a hackathon. That was my original intention. But the more that I kind of dug into what it takes to host a hackathon, the costs, the resources, the time, I realized that this would need to be at some sort of scale to have real impact. And so before just going out and trying to throw a hackathon with kind of an unknown group, what makes sense is first build a community in that area. And so the original intention was, I'm going to throw a hackathon. The reality was, we got to build a community first. So let's start with meetups. Let's see if there's interest. And then we can show that to, sort of these different protocols and foundations that would sponsor us, that we've got interest. There's a community. This would be impactful. Where we're at now is it's definitely still in the works, but the bootcamp has sort of pushed it back a bit because to me, this feels more impactful right now. And the way that I think of hackathons is they're sort of like these big climax events, right? Like there's a ton of people that come in, they hack, you get a lot of people building companies, talks, but after that, it's sort of like it just diminishes, right? It's kind of like empty. And you gotta like build that, you gotta keep that momentum going, or else you put a lot of time, resources into this one event, right? And there's no follow-up. And so still just kind of ideating. I'd love help from anyone that's listening to this. If you're interested in helping to collaborate on this, because we've got a really small team. It's myself and two others. Shout out Chase and Serene. But we would love help on this. Love to strategize, to figure out the best protocols to bring in as sponsors, as bounties, and also just scheduling, because I know this year's packed. ETH Global's got a packed schedule. There's this Excel sheet that's going around just with like 3 or 4 events a month. We're planning to go to ETH Denver. I also definitely want to try to make it to Tokyo this year. It's been on my list. So timing is always tricky, but more so making sure that when we do throw a hackathon, it really is impactful. It's not just like a 1 to 2 day thing with, without any follow up, and that we do collaborate with other communities and individuals to help make this a reality.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you're, really listening to your community and you're really listening to like what's best for the community, right? And so I really, really respect that. And San Diego is nice all year round. So whenever it comes around and comes, it'll be an awesome event, and I'm sure that it'll be well executed because everything that you've done so far for the community has been well executed. So yeah, all in good time. Thank you for that. Um,
Sure.
so I would love to see like what your thoughts are on how kind of crypto is right now. I know everyone's saying we're in a bear market, and I know the last few weeks, like crypto's been like, or actually last week, crypto's been pumping a little bit. But how
Yeah.
optimistic are you for crypto? Maybe if we just throw away the price, we don't have to talk about the price, but how optimistic are you for like 2023 for crypto? Do you think that we're going to see some interesting innovation this year? Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, just today, I played around with that dank sharding entropy generator, right? And that was really fun because at DevCon, um, I was at the talk where they were showing kind of this UI that they're building to do this, and today I think it went live, and I got to play with it, and it was really exciting to kind of like be able to contribute to this
Maybe you can tell
ceremony.
people kind of what it is. What is the Dink sharding UI?
Yeah, so if you go to well, I'll we'll have to link it because I forget the
Okay.
actual URL, but it's hosted on the Ethereum.org website. It's essentially anybody can contribute entropy to partake in this ceremony, and I think it's called the Powers of Tau ceremony. But it has to do with sort of the keys to be able to like process these Dink shard transactions. Um, I don't know. Uh, I'm not too technical on this part of things, but I briefly remember the talk, and I know that this EIP, totally gonna blank on it, Dink sharding EIP, right, is going to be coming out in the Shanghai update, and that's sort of another big step in the scaling, roadmap for Ethereum. And so I'm super optimistic on scaling, right, because that's sort of where we need to be if we want to really allow layer twos to fully see their potential and onboard, potentially billions of users. Because obviously, right now, we know the current state is that if Ethereum gets too congested, it's too expensive and too slow. Layer twos help with this, but dank sharding will unlock the ability for layer twos to really see more throughput. And so I'm super excited about scaling in general, and generally optimistic that builders will keep building in the bear. And there's still yes, there's people interested in AI, right? And like you're seeing this sort of trend, but I think still the people that are heads down, the cryptographers, the engineers, like they're still here, they're still building.
Yeah, I think for like for most people, they say like, oh, the bear market's a builder market. I like to say that both any market is a builder's market. Builders will build, right? Builders are going to continue to innovate and kind of like create some cool stuff. And that's one of the cool things about like the crypto community is there's obviously a lot of retail investors, and I think a lot of the retail investors that have gotten out of the game have exited, and now we're just kind of in this mode where it's like, hey, let's just kind of build some cool stuff, let's focus on the protocols, and let's focus on like bringing up the industry. Yeah, so is there anything else you're excited about 2023, even like personally that you plan on doing? You mentioned Tokyo. I hope that we see each other in Tokyo. That'll be fun. But is there anything else
Yeah,
you're excited about?
I mean, one last thing with respect to Ethereum, but I think just the continuance of progress in zero knowledge proofs, sort of the updates to like tools like Starkware and like their language Cairo. And I think this sort of ZK is going to be really, really important if we do, and I should say when we see a convergence of AI and crypto. There's an entire field called ZKML, so zero knowledge machine learning, and that's something that I'm quite interested in. Um, what I didn't share is I did uh, have somewhat of a background in AI and machine learning. Studied it, for my thesis in college, and then my first startup was working with computer vision algorithms. So, kind of seeing these two things come together is really, really exciting for me. And so I'd love to see them work together in a way that supports both communities.
Yeah, so ZKML, what is like the main kind of objective for that kind of project? Is it really to kind of meld the blockchain and machine learning kind of aspects together?
Yeah, I mean, one way you can think of so ZKML isn't just a project; it's a field of tools. But so zero knowledge proofs allow you to prove that some computation has been done without actually showing what you've computed on. And in the same way, with machine learning algorithms, like you have to process data, right? And that data typically either helps the accuracy get better or it doesn't. And so one interesting use case is proving that the data that you're training this model on is actually continuously improving the accuracy of the model. So that's one interesting use case. And you can kind of think of the problems that ZK helped to solve and tying those with some of the abilities that you get when you deal with privacy preserving machine learning.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. I feel like at some point we're gonna have to do our own whole episode just on like machine learning and how it's gonna interact with different blockchain protocols. Probably could do a whole episode on the concepts of like zk-ML and the tools around that. It's quite interesting, and I'm also very excited about all of the zero knowledge proof stuff, just because I think it's a very huge step that we need to make in terms of privacy. Um, uh, of all the ZK, roll-ups, do you have a particular one that you're kind of rooting for? You mentioned Starkware. Is that kind of like your go-to one right now?
I'm not going to pick a favorite here. I think they're all doing really great work, right? If we look back at this year, there were a bunch of ZK EVM implementations that came out from Scroll, from ZK Sync, and from Polygon, and that was sort of like I think what Vitalik called like the holy grail of scaling, right? So I'm really interested to see how those mature over time, and hopefully, all these companies can work together because they're all working towards the same mission, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think there's plenty of room, just like, right now there's obviously some other protocols that, are still out there working independently. And, who knows what we're going to see in terms of like, interoperability between these different, protocols and blockchains in the future. Some people for a while were talking about this concept of like cross chain, and cross chain might be the future, and I think it's cross protocol could be the future as well. Um, yeah, so that's quite interesting. So, what advice would you give to someone who is maybe looking to work in crypto, or maybe even just get a little bit more involved in the space? Do you have any kind of thoughts there?
Yeah, definitely. As someone that runs and hosts a lot of community events, find your local crypto community, go to events, participate, ask questions, and find a mentor. I think that the most understated thing is um, finding someone that you can look up to help you grow. And I think it can be sort of tough trying to like reach out and be vulnerable in that sense. But personally, in my life, coming from background where my parents weren't technical, where my parents didn't even go to college, I always had imposter syndrome, like as a kid. And what helped me was finding mentors or people that just had more experience than me that could sort of show me the ropes. And once you do get experience, pay it back, right? So find a community, learn, get good at something, and then help others. Because helping, teaching, and mentoring also not only helps everybody else and helps the entire community, but it also helps you become better and understand your skill set at a higher level. So that would be my general advice.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And, I think there's also this aspect of like when you learn something and then you teach it back to more people, it's just a natural law of mathematics, right? You're like, you're taking your knowledge and you're multiplying it. And it also just feels good to be able to help other people. I try to help a lot of people in the space, and yeah, it's very rewarding, and it helps the community be stronger. So yeah, if you're listening out there, just get involved. Follow some people, yeah, and do the due diligence. So yeah, what do you do for fun outside of the crypto space? You mentioned you surf. What else do you do for fun?
Yeah, it's hard not to be in the water as much as possible here in San Diego. We've got some of the best surf. It's generally pretty warm, although it can get cold in the winters. So surfing is definitely a hobby of mine. Um, Other than that, I mean, I'm kind of a foodie. I love exploring different restaurants with my fiance. Um, she also loves to cook, so that's fun. Um, so, I mean, really between surfing and sort of going out here in San Diego, hanging out with the community, going to dinners, like, life's really behind a computer. And that's not a bad thing. I should say
Yeah.
I love to travel too, and that's a privilege that I do get being in this ecosystem. And I think anybody that's been in crypto long enough realizes that the community is extremely diverse, international, and events are held in every corner of the world. And being able to go to all these different places, meet new faces, see new cultures, right? Eat new food is just something that's amazing about the space, and something that I really cherish.
Yeah, yeah, it is a really nice, unique thing about crypto is there's a huge digital nomad kind of crowd. There's a lot of events all over because it's a decentralized community in itself. Yeah, I think you were in like Costa Rica, I think not that long ago, and you were also in Colombia. So yeah, hopefully this year I see you in Tokyo, and we'll get some sushi.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to that, Kevin.
Yeah. Well, Chad, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Again, it's been really cool to, chat with you and learn about kind of how you're helping the community down there in San Diego. It's really awesome to hear about your journey into crypto, how you got to where you are, and you've given a lot of really good tips on how people can be successful. And so I really appreciate that. Where can people go to learn about you? And then where can people go to learn about ETH San Diego? Just one more time.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me on Twitter at ultrasoundchad, and then my handle's well, I guess the title is gmchad.eth, but it'll be at ultrasoundchad. So I've got kind of two names going, two pseudonyms. For ETH San Diego, it's all across the board, ETH San Diego, so ETH San Diego. We're on Twitter, we're on Substack, and Twitch as well. And if you want to tune into week 2 of the Alchemy Bootcamp that we're hosting here in San Diego, we'll be hosting that on Twitch tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I'll make sure I tweet that out so people can join in. That's really cool that you guys do those streams. And I think if you go on the Twitch, you might be able to see my talk that I gave in San Diego last time I was there. And if you go
Yeah,
to the Substack, you can see the podcast where Chad interviewed me just not that long ago. So be sure to check out his Substack because it's really great, and he posts a lot of updates. So I think that's super awesome that you do the newsletter and post the podcast. So, well, again, Chad, thank you so much. It's been awesome, and yeah, enjoy that surf down there in San Diego, and I hope to see you soon, man.
awesome, Kevin. Congrats on the new baby on the way, and hope to see you not in Denver, but maybe Tokyo.
Yeah, next time we meet, we'll do this in person. We'll do another episode.
Awesome. Take care, Kevin.
Take care.